All right, so welcome all of you guys to the Close.io webinar series. Today we're going to talk about how to close more deals on the phone and how to utilize the phone for sales. I've seen that the attendee list is mainly made up out of startups and technology companies, and founders, CEOs, and VPs of sales. So it's a pretty exciting crowd. My background, or a little bit of background of why phone sales is something that we care about deeply. Um, we started the company, now almost 3 years ago with Elastic, and started as an outsourced sales as a service to technology companies and venture-backed startups in Silicon Valley. By now, we have done campaigns for over 100 venture-backed startups where we did sales, drove sales and revenue to those companies and startups, and helped them develop a sales model that really worked. We've done over 250,000 phone calls, sales calls over the phone. So we know a little bit about this, and we really truly care about it. And one of the reasons why we developed Closer in the first place was that we used all these different systems to kind of improve on using the phone and email as communication tools to drive sales. And we saw these opportunities to tighten it up and really build a communication suite for salespeople. So that's how Close.io came to be. So before we get started, I want to just set up some context and the groundwork to why it's even a good idea to use the phone and actually call potential customers, leads, and signups to drive sales for your company. So one thing to remember is that the phone is a pretty amazing technology, especially for the profession of sales. Salespeople used to be, kind of traveling salespeople, going door to door, knocking on doors, kind of making one presentation at a time, and being limited by, physical laws and their local reach. And when the telephone came into being, it was a real paradigm shift for sales and salespeople because it allowed them to go beyond their local reach, and communicate and sell, throughout the country and eventually internationally, and to save time in a dramatic way and really boost productivity. So it used to be that 70% of your time you'll be traveling, walking from one door to another, from one place to the next. And 30% of your time you'll be actually selling. And the phone really reversed that into the favor of productivity and allowed you to sell 70% of the time and just spend 30% of your sales time with things that are irrelevant. The other thing that's great and that you have to keep in mind, especially if since many of you come from a technology and SaaS background and have SaaS products and companies, is that the phone is an amazing tool to actually create a human connection to your company and your product. People ultimately want to buy products and services from other human beings, from other people. It doesn't matter if you're selling to large enterprises or small SMBs or local restaurants. People love to buy from other people. They love to buy from people they like, they trust, and that they have a human and an emotional connection to. And the phone is just an amazing tool to accomplish that. And then, if you have a product that's very transactional in its nature. If you think about transactional sales being going to your local coffee shop and ordering a latte and then paying the person money in exchange to getting the product. In transactional sales business models, you don't really need to focus a lot on sales, and calling people to do transactional sales might or might not make sense. But when you actually have to communicate with your customers and manage objections and manage complex sales cycles and kind of break into a new market or work against competition or help understand what the problems or challenges are that your potential customers have. The phone and calling people to have a real human interaction communication with them, to help them manage their objections, to help them kind of understand the value proposition of your product, to help them see the ROI and come up with a model that allows them to purchase your product, become customers. The phone is really an incredibly powerful tool to accomplish that. And then, last but not least, for many startups, customer development, yes, you have to go out there and meet people in person, but the phone is going to be a great tool, or calling people is going to be a great tool to kind of, again, boost that productivity level and talk to so many more people, hear their questions, hear their confusions. What do they like about your product? What don't they like? Where they're confused about it? Kind of really understand it on a visceral level and take that feedback back into the product cycle, into the pricing discussion, into like many, many discussions that you guys are going to have internally in the company every day. So step number one when you want to do successful phone sales is you actually have to reach people. Now that sounds trivial, but it isn't. It's actually really important and something most people underestimate. A lot of times I talk to people And when they just starting out with phone sales, they tell me, well, I made some math, and I think that if we call 100 people a day, we're gonna, 30 of them are gonna be qualified, and I think at least we should be able to close 10 of them. And I always have to smile. And if you wait a week or two till they actually start doing those calls, they come back to you and they tell you, well, I call 100 a day, but I actually just reach 10 people a day. Well, and that's where the math it breaks down. And it's impossible to actually make work. So your core and key objective when you start out is, when you do phone sales, is to actually increase the number of people you reach and you actually have a communication with. When it comes to inbound sales calling, there's a bunch of things that you need to keep in mind. One thing that we do for Close.io is that whenever somebody signs up for a 14-day free trial, we try to call that lead within 5 minutes of the sign up. And it's actually truly crucial to call within 5 minutes. And there's many studies about this, that if you call somebody an hour later or a day later after they signed up, your reach rates go down so dramatically. In our case, if we call somebody a day or 2 days later, we're going to reach about 20% of the signups. If we call within 5 minutes, we reach about 70%, 80% of the signups. Dramatic difference. Many simple reasons for that. Somebody signed up, it means right now that person is on their, computer. They probably right now on your side. Their whole mind share and focus is around your service and product. And they're probably not in a meeting. They're probably not out at lunch. So it's a great time to actually reach them and then make that initial connection and start the sales process right there and then. Whenever you think about outbound calling or calling people back and things like that, one key thing to keep in mind whenever you do like large outbound volume calls is you need to keep in mind time zones, especially when you do sales in kind of the United States in general. You want to reach people in each coast. A lot of times, we see this, companies spend lots and lots of time doing tons and tons of dials, but lots of these dials are super ineffective because they're calling people at lunchtime or they're calling people at time zones where it doesn't make sense. So again, we've developed our product in a way that allowed us, and in Close.io very soon, in about a week or two, you're going to be able to actually generate lists that you want to call and kind of prioritize these lists based on time zones. So you know that the next person that you're calling is really optimized on the ideal time to actually have a conversation. One new trend and a big trend, if you want to do outbound phone sales and you're calling SMBs, you're calling professionals like doctors, lawyers, and things like that, it might make sense to just do the cold call. It's not a perfect tool, but we see many, many startups that succeed with this in a huge way. And we've done large outbound cold calling campaigns in the past very successfully. Whenever your target market is more in the enterprise or kind of larger organizations, the cold call is very ineffective today. And there's a book, a great book, many of you probably have already heard it, from Aaron Ross, called Predictable Revenue. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. I'll send an email. We're recording this whole session, so you're going to get the recording as well as some of the things that I'm talking about and kind of links and documents. And one of it is a link to Aaron Ross' Predictable Revenue, where he describes a really effective process that they used for Salesforce to start the enterprise sales and scale it up to $100 million, which was basically, instead of just cold calling into the enterprise and then navigating through all the different departments, which is a huge waste of time, is to find email addresses of people that are one or two levels above the person that's the actual decision maker for your product or service, and send a cold email that's very short, that's very targeted, tells the person, hey, here's what we do, here's why it's relevant to your company. Can you introduce me or refer me to the right person internally to talk about this for 15 minutes? And then you get if you do that right, about 30% of the time you get that top level executive to make an introduction down in the hierarchy to the person that you should be talking to, and going about that way, and then scheduling the first call a lot of times is a lot more successful to actually increase the amount of people you actually reach when you pick up the phone and when you dial those numbers. Another really trivial thing that many people ignore, and we see many companies just do wrong, is not utilizing calendar invites and reminders effectively enough. So they do a lot of first, either inbound or outbound calling. They qualify customers, and then there's a follow-up call that's scheduled, and they don't send calendar invites, and they don't make sure that a day before they send another automated kind of reminder email. Hey, looking forward to our call tomorrow. Here's again the context. Let me know if you have any questions, if there anything there's that we can prepare, or if you want to, if the time doesn't work anymore. In certain verticals, it doesn't really matter. You have like 80, 90% show up rate, so people just always pick up the phone when they schedule a call with you. But in many other industries, especially in the SMB sector, if you do phone sales, you'll see that a huge amount, over 50% of people that set up a call with you will not pick up the phone. So you need to utilize those tools to make sure that people know and are reminded that they should pick up and you're able to reach them. And then once you have something that really, once you have a process and a sales phone model that really is humming and working, and you know who you're calling, and you've kind of optimized the entire model, then it's about time to use some more advanced technologies like power dialers, which basically allow you to call one person after the other. So the moment I hang up the call, the next call is being initiated, so I don't spend any time picking up phone numbers, dialing them manually, kind of wasting all that productive time, and just generate a list of people I need to reach, either inbound or outbound, and hit the play button, and it just goes one number after the other. It just power dials through it. And then even one level advanced to that is predictive dialers, where if you have multiple people, let's say you should probably have at least about 5 salespeople on the phones to make predictive dialers really work, where the technology takes a huge set of phone numbers. Depending on the reach rates, the predictive dialer will improve. But let's say, for simplicity's sake, it takes 10 phone numbers and dials 10 to 20 numbers at a time. And then the numbers that actually pick up, where it's not a voicemail or any kind of automated system, where a human being picks up, the predictive dialer then routes that pickup to a salesperson. So you have like 20, 30 calls, all the calls that are not connecting are just dropping, and the system intelligently just connects salespeople with picked up human beings on the phone. So what happens there is that I don't even listen to dial tones, I don't listen to voicemails, I don't waste all that time. I just go boom, and somebody says hello. I start my conversation with that person. The call hangs up, and the next person's on, right? And you can tweak the frequencies and all that. It's really advanced technology. And we have really good experience both with power dialers and predictive dialers at Closeout and ElasticSales, and I can share some more information. If at any point you want more in-depth discussion about things, just send me an email at steli@elasticsales.com or steli@close.io. And I can give you a lot more details, and definitely we could jump on another call and talk about it. All right, so reaching people is key. Once you reach somebody, your core objective, or one of the core fundamentals of phone sales, is that you need to sound good. And that sounds very superficial, but it's actually very deep in that we only have about 5 seconds on the phone to create a first impression and to generate a mental image on the other side of the line. As human beings, we're incredibly visual. We need to actually create mental images to be able to comprehend content and language. So when we talk to somebody, and when I talk to you right now, if you want it or not, consciously or subconsciously, you're creating an image of imagining who I am, how I look, how I act, how I feel, what my environment is like. And that image and impression is going to influence the way you perceive what I'm telling you. So it's super important to sound good, because the tool that you have on the phone is your voice. And your tonality is much more important than the actual content of what you're saying. It's about 70 to 30%. I know a lot of people don't like that, but it is the truth. Like, it's tested and true in psychology that tonality will be a lot larger factor of influence than the actual content of what you're saying. So how do you want to sound, right? That's a good question to ask. Well, there's 3 key things that are always good, no matter who you're doing sales to over the phone. It's good to sound smart. It's good to sound enthusiastic, and you want to sound like an authority or an expert in your field. And first of all, why do you want to have these key 3 trademarks? Well, first of all, everybody likes to buy things from people they think are smart, right? Because that kind of vets is this going to be a good decision for me? Is this somebody that I can trust, and somebody that has intelligence that I want to follow? Why do you want to sound enthusiastic? Well, first of all, there's not enough enthusiastic people out there, right? I'm not interacting on a daily basis. Ask yourself, how many people do you truly interact with that are incredibly enthusiastic? And how does it make you feel when you actually talk to somebody that is excited about what they're doing? Now, if you're calling somebody, if you're interacting with somebody over the phone, talking about your product, your service, if you're not excited about it, why should they be? And if they're not excited about it, why bother at all? So it's always refreshing and fun and exciting to actually talk with people that are excited, that are enthusiastic. It always makes us smile, it always raises up our energy level, and it makes people sit up more straight, pay more attention, feel more energized. And that's kind of those are really powerful emotions and things that you want to have going for you on the phone. And then the last but not least is the whole authority and expert part. I mean, it's obvious. We want to buy from people that we think are experts, know more than we do about this certain area, so that we are assured that we're making good decisions, so that we're assured that we're not making mistakes. It's kind of a fear that needs to be addressed without saying it out loud. It's kind of like in between the lines. You need to convey to me that you are an expert, you're an authority, you're somebody I should actually really listen to and trust. And you now, okay, so we've established smart, enthusiastic, and authority and expert. Cool. Now you ask Steli, okay, how exactly do I do that? How exactly does somebody sound smart or enthusiastic or like an authority and expert? Um, there's not. There's a couple of quick tricks, right? Or a couple of not tricks, but a couple of like key universal traits in terms of linguistics that will make that work in your favor, or that will create that impression for you. First of all, if you like it or don't like it, it's tested and true that when people talk a little bit faster in a faster pace, universally that's more associated with somebody who is intelligent than when somebody talks incredibly slow, which usually is then also associated with that person being slower in their mental processing power. So, and we all know people that talk very slow, especially developers. A lot of developers are very thoughtful, very slow paced in their language, and incredibly smart. So it doesn't mean that it's true, but still is an association that in most of your buyer's mind just subconsciously is anchored that somebody that talks a little bit at a faster pace probably thinks faster, probably is a little bit smarter. So talking a bit at a faster pace is a good thing. Everything in moderation, obviously, but you don't want to talk too slowly. The enthusiastic part is easy, right? That's all about the volume level of your voice. It's all about your intonations. It's all about how passionate, enthusiastic, how loud to a certain degree sometimes you sound. You don't want to sound like that all the time, right? It's overpowering. You want to, just like I do right now, slow down at certain times and kind of take your time. And at other times where it's really important, you want to ramp up the volume and actually grab somebody. And if you're able to play with your voice and your tonality like that, and have it in control, your pacing, your tonality, your voice, it's gonna kind of take the person, the listener, the person on the other end of the line with you to the journey, and you're gonna influence the emotional household and their state through your voice and the way you sound. It's a pretty powerful thing. And then how do I sound like an authority? That's actually one simple thing to do there is that you obviously you need to know what you're talking about, but another way to do that is to actually value your time. So anyone who can talk for hours and hours and hours every day is somebody who doesn't value their time, and typically it means that person's time is not in high demand. So when you're on calls with people, when you do phone sales, you want to have a certain sense of urgency. You want to convey that you're here, you're there, they have your full attention, but you need to move on too. And we have 30 minutes to talk about it, figure it out, answer all the objections, get to the next steps, and then you need to move on with life because you have more calls, more customers that want to talk to you. You're important, you're in demand. That kind of creates the impression that you're an authority, you're an expert. And then state control, right? So when you're on the phone or whenever you're interacting with lots of people and customers, it's all about making sure that you have little rituals and your team has little rituals to get into a good state and have a good level of energy. Smiling is a good idea. And really, all those little like old sales kind of truths are still valid today. All right, so now we reach people, we have the right energy and tonality to make them listen and make them want to be influenced by us. What happens next? You need to ask questions, lots of them, right? He who talks is actually not in control of the conversation, but the person who asks is guiding the conversation in the direction that that person wants to. So asking questions is really important, and qualifying people is really important. You want to know, first and foremost, if that person, if that potential customer should buy your product. Will they be successful? Do they really qualify? Should they really make a purchasing decision? You need to answer those questions before you even get to selling. And the phone and calling people to do that is a super effective tool to accomplish that. So over the entirety of the call, you want to talk for about 40% of the time. You want to listen for the majority of it. And active listening, right? Not just having the other person talk while you are in your mind formulating your next sentence. Listening doesn't mean waiting till the other person has to take a breath so you can jump into the talking mode. Listening actually means to give the other person your full attention and really focus on understanding, putting yourself in their shoes and understand who is this person, what do they care about, what are their problems, what's going on there. Really understand them first and foremost before you try to sell anything. You need to know who your ideal customer is. You need to know what key patterns of your most successful customers are and what red flags are. So if you sell, for an example, if you sell, let's say, an Android app to doctors, and you call up, doctor practices, you want to ask in the qualifying questions. You want to ask them if they have, Android device or an iOS device. You want to ask them if they have a good internet connection. If you have like a product that's in the cloud and relies on a good internet, you want to ask them a couple of like key questions that are the groundwork for can they even use the product. You want to ask them some red flag things. When you know that certain customers with that there's certain key patterns are more successful than others, you want to qualify them for that. You want to at least ask 3 to 5 questions before you even attempt to sell. And most salespeople try to sell much faster than they actually understand the other person fully. So the phone is an amazing tool for you to actually qualify customers. And a qualified customer means that somebody that means a successful customer later on. And a successful customer is what we all want, because those are the people that are going to keep buying from us, that are keep growing our accounts, and they're going to keep telling other customers that they should come and bring their business to us. And then when you ask questions and you qualify people, you learn a lot. You need to learn some really key things from a buying perspective and sales perspective. This is really the decision maker, or who are the decision makers? What's the budget? What is the timing? Do they want to make a decision now or later? Are we in competition? Are we compared to other products? Most likely. And to which products? And how are they going to make those comparisons to actually arrive at a decision? You want to ask all those questions to really have a good idea who that potential customer is and if they really qualify for your product before you jump into anything else. And then, after you qualify people, you typically will give them kind of a small pitch on what over the phone, what your product does and how it addresses kind of the key challenges, their problem, how it fixes their pain and eases their pain. And then what happens is that people will have objections, right? It's just natural. People will have fears. People will have certain questions that they have about pricing, about reliability, privacy, security. They will have questions how your product compares to other products. They'll have all kinds of questions. And the beauty of phone sales is that when you have a human being on the phone and they tell you what their objections are, that's a great opportunity. That's an amazing opportunity for you to actually work with them and manage those objections and give them the right answers and the right solutions to those virtual problems that they're making up, so that they can actually feel good about making a buying decision. And that's something that if you don't call your potential customers, you have very little chances to manage. Yes, you can put FAQ documents all day long on your website and make it totally self-sign up, but people will still have real issues, real questions, real objections to purchasing your product. And nothing is more powerful than a human being that I trust, that I like, that gives me really good answers to those questions. So don't shy away from them. Don't be, many salespeople are like, oh my God, again, question about pricing. No, embrace it. It's a powerful opportunity for you to actually change somebody's mind. And that's the whole reason why you should have salespeople at all. If it's transactional, if it's just like answering questions, if it's just about like asking you for your credit card, it's transactional. If it's transformational, it's about changing somebody's mind or giving somebody the emotional certainty that they need to be able to make a purchasing decision. So what you want to do is, if you've pitched 10, 20, 30 people about your product, you know kind of what the top 25 questions are that people have about your product. You want to create a document, an FAQ document, where you write down those top 25 questions and where you give 1-paragraph answers. It's important that it's not longer than 2 or 3 sentence answers, really short answers to those questions. And this is not about learning these answers word by word and memorizing them and then being a robot that just answers the questions word by word or reads from a document. What this is about is not about the content. It's about the clarity that the document and the content is creating from a sales perspective. So this is all about you being able to answer a question from a customer as if it's no problem, as if you've heard that question a million times, and as if you have a simple answer and solution to that question. Whenever you compute answers to questions on the fly, what happens is that you're gonna babble on for too long. Because you're just thinking about how to answer this, and you're kind of talking as you're thinking, which will ultimately lead to you talking for way too long and not being clear enough and concise enough. And what that conveys, on a communication level, is that you're not certain and you're not sure and you're not clear about this question. And that will never make me as a potential customer confident in that answer. So the beauty here is just write down one paragraph answers, and you want to review those FAQ documents once a month in the early days, and once a quarter once you're a little bit more established. Kind of have the entire team look at the top questions that people ask and how do we answer those? What's kind of the basic way that we address them? And then, some products always have like an elephant in the room. I had a sales office hour yesterday with a founder, a very successful startup, and that person was telling me they're kind of venturing off their product now to a different vertical, talking to larger customers, and kind of most of those customers already have a product in that category. And now he was asking me, how do I go about this? Because I know that my product is a good addition to what they typically already using, but many people, I can sense that at the end of the conversation that many people have that objection of like, we already have something, so we don't need something new. So how do I go about this? And my advice is to kind of address it heads on. Like if you know that everybody at the beginning of the conversation will think, we already have something, or we don't need this, address it. Don't kind of let that linger in the other person's mind. Verbalize it and address it. And that's, again, a beautiful thing about phone sales is that you have the chance to do that. You can start a conversation by saying, listen, dear potential customer, 9 out of 10 people that I talk to kind of in your position already have a product. I'm sure you do too. Let me tell you this story about the customer that we closed just yesterday. This huge organization that you want to emulate. That they had the same product that you had, and here's why they decided to add our product as an additional tool to their suite, and how it has increased their ROI, and why they're super happy with it. So, before we even go any further in the discussion, let me address the big question, which is, do you need an additional thing? Here's why you might, and you just address it at the beginning of the conversation rather than hoping, oh, I hope the person will not have this one major objection that every person has that I'm talking to, right? Just go ahead and address it right away. And then you need to learn on phone sales. And that's another beautiful thing about calling people, talking to your customers, talking to your target market, is that you can learn to kind of read between the lines and decode customer lingo and learn what real versus fake objections are. People saying, oh yeah, send me more information. Oh yeah, right now is not the right time. Yes, it's too expensive for us. Yeah, if you only had X, Y, and Z feature, we would totally buy. Learn to kind of challenge those objections and figure out, are those real customer objections or not? Is this person really interested in your product or not? And kind of learn, are people really going to buy our product, and who are those people, and what are the real challenges that we need to overcome there? One really important technique that people should use on the phone, especially in the early sales cycle on the phone, is something like virtual closing technique. So what you want to do is when you've called inbound or outbound, you call the lead, you qualified them, their potential customer, you kind of gave them the early pitch, and you manage all their objections. Now what do? You can go right for the close, and some products can have a first call close. So you should go for that. Some products, especially if it's more complicated enterprise sales, you want to have multiple steps. They probably have kind of a buying cycle internally. So what you want to do there is you want to go and do a virtual close with them. So you want to say, hey, potential customer, it sounds like what we do is a great fit for you. Now let me ask you, what are all the steps that it's going to take for us to actually successfully work together and you to become a customer of ours? And then ask that open-ended question and basically tell them to tell you what are all the steps that we have to take to make you a customer. Here's what's going to happen. First of all, the person is going to start imagining a future in which they become a customer, which is the mental mind frame you want your leads to be in, the potential customers to be in. You want them to imagining a future where they are your customers. So that's a good thing. The other thing that's going to do is that they're going to actually tell you what are all the steps that you're going to have to take. They're going to give you kind of a roadmap of actions and steps you need to take to close them. And it's going to give you and them real clarity of what needs to be accomplished. And the other thing that's going to happen is that it's going to raise red flags for you, or it's going to display that they're really, you thought the entire time on the phone that they're really interested, but when you ask that question, it's a real clarifier. It's going to signal that no, they're actually not really interested. And it's going to give you some data to create your pipeline. You're going to know, hey, what's the real deal size? What is a real expected time to close this deal? What's my confidence level? All data that you need to actually manage pipeline effectively. So let me demonstrate how you want to do this. You want to be telling people, hey, guide me through all the steps that we're going to have to take to actually for you to become a customer of ours. And people will respond, well, you know what? I have to bring this back to my team. Then we'll elaborate on that and brainstorm around that, and then I'll get back to you. Cool. What happens usually when you brainstorm with your team? How does that work? Like, do you guys have weekly meetings? Do you need a PowerPoint presentation? Like, what's the format? Tell me a little bit more about that. Well, yeah, we go through this PowerPoint, or we do a stand-up, and it's 5 minutes, and I'll bring it up, and people will have questions. If we think it's interesting enough, we will want to schedule a second call and have like 3 or 4 key stakeholders join us on that call. Awesome. So now we're on that call, dear potential customer. 4 people, all the stakeholders are together. Everybody asks questions. Let's say I address all those questions in a way that satisfies you guys and makes you excited. What happens then? Are we in business already, or what are the next steps? No. Then typically what we're going to do is we're going to go through legal, and we're going to have to go through all these different steps. Awesome. All right. So what was the last time that you actually had to do this with a similar product or service like ours? So you want to figure out, have they done this recently? Or if they tell you at that point, well, last time we did this 7 years ago, it's a red flag, obviously, right? They say, well, 3 months ago we purchased this product, we went through these steps. Cool. What anything that we need to know, like how many weeks, days did it take? What documents did we have to prepare? Kind of figure out a real roadmap. I'm talking going really in depth and detail. And then not stopping until you hear somebody say yes to the question, and then are we in business? A lot of times when you ask that question, they go, oh, then we go through legal, and you go through all the steps with them, and you ask them, okay, and then we are in business, right? They say no. They say, no, well, then we still have to do X, Y, and Z. You follow up and go in depth until you've arrived at that virtual close. And then you know, okay, here's everything that's going to take to actually make this happen. And if you do this, you're going to eliminate something that I call being really badly prepared, or how salespeople like to call it, being surprised, having surprises. Like a salesperson will come and put a deal on the pipeline and say, this is going to be an awesome deal, this is a huge customer, and then it's going to close next week, and then next week it's going to be like, oh, no, we still have to take this 2 steps, so it's going to close in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks down the line, well, no, there's still this other step. That is a signal for a sales process that's not well defined, right? You haven't done your homework to really know what's going to take to close this deal and have realistic expectations. So always at the early times, especially with more complex sales cycle, use the virtual closing technique. All right, so now let's talk about some true basics of phone sales. One is that I encourage everybody to use a real technology or tool is actual sales scripts. Now, I know many of you are really smart people. The people that you're hiring are incredibly smart, intelligent, and creative, and nobody wants to be a monkey and just read off a script. And I don't encourage you to do that. Nobody in my team, for my salespeople, is reading off a script word by word. But we all write scripts. And we review scripts in the early days, once a month. In the later days, once you're really more established, once a quarter. You really want to do that. Like a designer would not just start designing things on the fly. You want to mock up things. You want to experiment, tweak, trim the fat, really figure out a process that works, really figure out a story, a flow of the conversation that really works. And to do that, you want to write down word for word what you're saying to customers over the phone. You want to look at it and read it out loud and distribute it and share it with other founders, your investors, people you trust, and ask them, what could we improve? What about this is stupid? What could be formulated in a better way? What question don't we ask? Really work with that document as a kind of guideline of how the conversation should be, how your sales phone call should be created. And then if you have sales scripts, the other cool thing about them is that they're going to allow you to train new people on board and scale your team much faster. And it's going to give you a tool to do quality control and see, is there something key that we're missing? Is there something that's a problem? Like, if all your salespeople always give way too high discounts, for instance, you can identify that as a problem and then go back and look at the sales scripts and your objection management documents and see if your salespeople actually say those things, or if those things are not believable, or if you need to kind of change the way you talk about pricing or discounting in your product. Kind of gives you a real good tool to keep the quality high of your sales team and of the way that you talk and sell to customers over the phone. All right, so what I want to do now, excuse me, what I want to do now is really quickly, as quickly as I can, show you guys two actual scripts and go through the psychology of them. And I'm going to share them if you're interested. You can email me. I'm going to send you those documents, some more explanation around them. The first script that I want to share is a really simple, really simplified outbound cold calling script that we used for ElasticSales. So when we had the idea for ElasticSales, the next day we started cold calling potential customers, because we said, how do we validate if there's a real market, if startups would actually pay us money to do sales for them? We decided, let's not build a website, let's not come up with a cool name, let's not waste time with all this stuff. Let's just create a simple script, create a bunch of leads, and cold call them and see what the market is telling us. So here's how we did it, and I'll give you guys some guidance on why this worked really, really well. So to give you some history, our goal was, we said we're going to do cold calls for 2 weeks. And if we could get one customer that is willing to pay us money for a service that has no website, no brand name, we were using fake names at the time because we were still experimenting with the idea. We didn't want the world to know that that was what we were trying out. So there was no credibility whatsoever. And we said, if we can find a customer cold with no credibility whatsoever, it's a strong enough signal for us to pursue this idea. This script got us 7 customers in 2 weeks. All right, so here's what we did. Excuse me. So we called technology startups that had a Series A or Series B, so it was well-financed. The first sentence when you call somebody that don't know who you are, is you want to give them some context, and you want to convince them that they should keep listening at least for another sentence. That's your whole objective. The first sentence on a cold call is, let me convince you, let me say something that will make you go, all right, I'm going to listen for another sentence. Because when somebody calls us that we don't know, we're trying to figure out, our questions in our mind are, who is this person? Does this person want to sell me something? How can I get rid of this person? So we need to address all those questions in a way that makes the person go, okay, I'm going to listen to one more question. So we would call and say, hey, my name is Steli. I'm calling some startups in the area to find out if they're a good fit for a beta program. Right? So this sentence was really effective for our market, startup technology companies, because I was implying here, hey, I'm calling startups in the area, so I'm probably also in the area, so local startups, so probably somebody that is more like me, so I might want to listen to them. And I wanted to find out if you're a good fit to a beta program. And lots of startups started with beta programs. You probably had beta programs, alpha programs when you started your product. So it's kind of a rapport building exercise here. And something I'm using startup lingo, I'm sounding like somebody that person might like or might be able to associate with, so that person will want to keep listening to me. The next thing that I would have to do is to actually give context in one simple sentence. Now that the person goes, maybe I should listen to this, the person asks yourself, what is this about? And I need to address that immediately. And that's what we did when we said, what we do in a sentence is we provide companies with a sales team on demand. The simplest way we could, explain what we did. And then we would ask, does this sound generally interesting to you? And people could say, it didn't really matter what people would say at that point. They could say yes, no, or maybe. If they said, yes, we'd say, awesome. Let me ask you, what's your current sales process? If people said, maybe, I'd say, awesome. Let me ask you, what's your current sales process? And if people said, no, we're not interested in that, I would say, oh, wow, that's interesting. What's your current sales process? Why isn't this interesting to you? So, in any way, we would launch off to the qualifying part and kind of ask a bunch of questions, understand the other person, understand if that startup was interested, and then going to kind of a test close. We'd ask them, if timing was right, we would give them a price and see if they're interested in that price or not. We would tell them we could only give them a salesperson to start because we only had one to start with. And we asked them the virtual closing, like, what's the decision-making process? What are all the steps that we're going to have to take? And then we'd schedule a follow-up close. This script is super simple. We wrote this in 1 hour, and it brought us 7 customers in 14 days with no credibility, no history in this market. Another quick script that I want to share is an inbound script. So how to call people when they sign up for your product. So here's a script that we're using at Close.io. So if somebody signs up for Close.io, for the 14-day free trial, what we do is we try to call them within 5 minutes, and we use this script to kind of qualify the new sign up. We say, hey, my name is Steli. So that you just signed up for Close.io, I wanted to personally reach out and say hi. Here again, I'm establishing some rapport and context, and I'm saying, hey, I'm just calling from the service you just signed up, and I wanted to personally welcome you. People love that. The next question that we ask is something that's super effective, super important. So we ask if it's a bad time to chat, or if they have a few minutes since they're already checking out our product. And most people say yes, but if somebody says no, you don't want to. You want to be aware that person has time constraints, or is about to jump off to another call or something, or is in the middle of a meeting or about to go to a meeting. So you want to kind of figure that out and then reschedule. Most of the time people say no to that question, and it gives us permission to continue. I say, the next sentence that we say is, I know that you're just getting started with Close.io, and wanted to see how you found out about us. Where did you hear about us? And what were the reasons why you decided to sign up for the trial, right? So here, what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is, I want to know a little bit more about you. I want to hear how you heard about us. I want to see, what is it that you're looking for, and can I help you in getting there? And then once they give you some feedback, and also it gives us a little bit of an idea of what marketing channels people come from and how they hear about us, is super effective. So once a sign-up user tells us about that, we'll jump into the qualifying part of it. We will try to figure out, is this person really a qualified lead? Because if not, I will recommend them to go to another service. But if they are, I will put them in my pipeline, make sure I take care of them, they get training, they get care, and they become a successful customer of Close.io. So I say, I also wanted to make sure that we're a good fit for you, and that you'll succeed with Close.io. So I'm curious, what's your main challenge goals regarding sales? How many people do you have in your team? And there's 5 more questions that we ask on the qualifying level. And if those questions are bad, we actually tell people to go somewhere else. We try to save people time, not go through a 14-day trial if it's not for them. But if it is for them, what we'll make sure is we're going to tell them what they need to do to succeed, and we're going to end the call with a follow-up time to jump on another call during the 14-day trial and kind of check in with them, make sure we address all questions, make sure we take care of them. And we set up a follow-up time and date and send a calendar invite, and then we put them in our pipeline as a real opportunity that we want to work hard for to make a success. All right. So last 2 slides before we go into the Q&A section. A few quick thoughts on calling and phone sales benchmarks. So here's a couple of things that you want to track. You want to track the number of dials that you do on a daily, or weekly, or monthly basis per rep. You want to track how many people do you actually reach. You want to track how many people actually qualified out of the bunch that you reach. And you want to track how many people you actually close. So number dialed, number reached, number qualified, number closed. The other thing you actually want to track on the phone sales side of things is how many minutes somebody's actually on the phone, right? So and we've built this into Close.io. So when you use Close.io, you do a lot of calls through our software. You can tell not only how many dials somebody did or how many leads somebody called, but actually how many minutes on the phone that person spent the day. And that's a really important indicator also to see if somebody is dialing a lot of really bad leads. If they're dialing huge numbers, but they're really a few minutes on the phone a day, it kind of gives you a good signal if you're productive on the phone. And then lots of people are asking me, how many calls, dials per day should my salespeople, or should I as a salesperson do? That's almost impossible to say with certainty without having more information on how the quality and quantity of your leads are, and how many people you actually reach, and what the typical length of a qualifying or closing call is. I need to know these things to give you real benchmarks and numbers. And if you have questions about this, we can jump on a sales office hour and we can dive into that. I'm more than happy to help. But to give you guys a range, so you have some kind of mental benchmarks to think about, if you do ice cold outbound calling, you call people that are not qualified and where you're not going to reach a lot of people, where your reach rates are probably at the 10, 20, 25%, a salesperson can dial 200 to 400, can make 200 to 400 dials a day, right? Easily. not with their iPhone in a spreadsheet, but if they use something more sophisticated, they can do that easily. And we've done this many, many times. I think, our best reps in terms of outbound campaigns would do 500 dials a day, 5 days a week. If you do hot inbound leads, you do really highly qualified conversations, they call you or you call them within the first 5 minutes of signups. So you have almost 100% reach rate and you have real long conversations with people. It might be more than 25 to 50 calls a day. Both those numbers, to give you some guiding, are only numbers for people that are spending 80% of the time on the phone. If you have salespeople that should do some calls, but also emails and also lead gen and also a bunch of other things, then those numbers will have to be adjusted. And I can talk to you about this in more depth, but there's some really basic benchmarks you want to keep and basic numbers. When we talk to people that say, oh, we do large cold call outbound campaigns and our reps call 50 and do $50 a day, we ask them, do they do anything else? And they say, no, we know that's probably super ineffective. So keep that in mind. All right, and then last but not least, just a few words on calling. I've been talking about the phone a lot, but we've already moved on technologically. There's something that's called VoIP, so you can make phone calls through the web, through the internet. It's actually something that you should really consider. A, it's cheaper. B, you want to take advantage of some of the technologies of VoIP, especially when it comes to tracking calls and automatically tracking calls and having that in your CRM and your sales software. And then having records and real data, like how many minutes on the phone did we on average take to close deals? How many dials do my reps do? Who did we or didn't we call out of all the leads, inbound, outbound? You really want to have data as much as possible. In some cases, you want to even use recordings and be able to use those recordings for training or search for certain conversations that happened in the past and be able to listen to specific phone call conversations. And to make that work, there's just a few key things on quality. You need a great internet connection. You need to make sure that you're plugged in. Wi-Fi is typically can be iffy when it comes to the persistent quality. And you need to use a great headphone and headset to actually make the quality of a VoIP work well. But VoIP in combination with sales software is a winning combination for phone sales. So definitely think about that. All right, that's all that I wanted to cover. I'll jump now out of the presentation and we'll have a little over 10 minutes to go through